Greetings, Darklings, from across the interweb. It's once again I, the Duchess, Precious Ked. I got a big one today, one that I am super stoked for. This is an interview that's been like 5 years in the making since I first met this person, started talking to them, and throwing around the idea of an interview. But before we get to that, as always, I say if you send me something, I will talk about it on the show. And the man, the myth, the legend, Martin King sent me over a new DogTablet shirt. This will make my third now, but I think it's the one I like best. It's very cool in a charcoal gray, and this ties perfectly with my guest that I will introduce now. This is somebody who is a record label, who sings in a very cool industrial band, who does, to me, one of the most amazing outreach charity things in dark scene industrial music, and just does so much to support so many people in the scene all around. You could go the scene over, and I dare you to try and find anybody who doesn't just say when I bring up their name, now that's just a good guy. That's just a straight shooter with upper management written all over him. So it is my total pleasure to bring on the show Jim Semonik, Distortion Records. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Ken, for having me. That is a immense string of compliments there.
And that's from the heart. Like really truly, I don't know. I do think of you as somebody who puts your money where your mouth is. When it comes to doing the legwork, really, a lot of labels will take people on in 2025, things like that. And if you've kind of got the ball rolling, they might help you get to that next level. I mean, that's what a lot of being a label is these days, is to help with that kind of promotion. But I
Sure.
feel like you are one of those in a label that is scraping the early underground for fresh new talent and helping them get the ball rolling. And I don't see that a lot. I mean, that used to be part of what a record label was, and I feel like that is something that you were doing and just genuinely making the scene a brighter place. So, no, man, that comes from the heart, brother. I
I
appreciate you.
I appreciate you, and that's amazing that you say that because I only the mentality that I come from, as far as the label goes, goes back to the labels I was influenced by and followed, in my college and formative years
Sure.
and like late high school, and all throughout college. And those labels were like 21st Circuitry, Reconstriction, Fifth Column, Cleopatra, Metropolis, Cop International, like those labels. I wouldn't even, when I went music shopping, I looked for labels. I didn't look for bands.
Label samplers were a big deal because I mean, we didn't have the internet, brother. We're
Right.
old. We did. There was a
Yeah.
time when that was not an option other than maybe like BBSs.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to find out about new music, that was the way to do it. You'd go down to your local record store, ride your bike down there, and dig through the racks to find out that the new Cleopatra sampler or like cover tribute or something came out, and you'd know the first three bands on it, and then you'd listen to the next six and find
Yeah.
three of them that you were like, this is my jam.
Yeah. There was the Industrial Revolution Volume 2 was a key one for me. The Ross DVA, There Is No Time comp was huge. All the Reconstriction, like covers comps, like Shut Up Kitty and Operation Beatbox and the 21st Circuitry Cold Wave Breaks comps. Those were all huge for me.
Yeah.
And turned me on to so much new music back then, and still to this day I'm a fanboy for those bands,
Oh yeah.
so I try to to transfer that mentality and the love I had for those labels to my own bands, and kind of show the same amount of care and consideration for my own bands that I felt an underground band needs, and that maybe I didn't feel like got enough attention back then, because back then, there was an alternative press magazine that would actually cover industrial stuff. Not to a great extent, but pretty decent. If you were a Skinny Puppy or a Nitz or Ebb or a
Sure.
Ministry or Nine Inch Nails, but the real underground stuff, that like the stuff meant, Metropolis was putting out at the time, like Mentallo or Electro Assassin or Love is Colder Than Death, like those real early Metropolis releases. I didn't feel like, we're getting the same attention, so then, uh, then the 16 volts and the Clay People and the Acumen Nations kind of happened. And, a lot of that stuff did start picking up a bit of steam, back then. So I I kind of want to treat my label as like, a place where a safe place where bands can come, create whatever they want, and not have to worry about someone interfering with their creative process, and being like, you can't put that track on there, you can't put this track, you have to have this in this order. I don't ever want to interfere with any kind of creative anything for my artists. I kind of feel like creative freedom's big,
Yeah.
and maybe I can help them get a show, or get noticed by a zine or a publication, or but I'm, like I tell everybody, I'm not a miracle worker, I'm just one guy,
Sure.
and and with a day job, and there's a very, very limited amount of time that I have, and so I tell people to just bear with me, I'll do what I can.
I think no, I think that's a big part of it. And I think when you talk about the creativity, that is one of the difference on labels nowadays. But after kind of when you mention the, I don't know, industrial revolution where things crossed over a bit, there were a lot of people that maybe went to labels that started out with more of a edge of industrial music and art and got told, so can you make this sound more like the Nine Inch Nails? Is it
Right.
can,
Yes.
because we hear that guy is blowing up and that's what we would like you to reproduce.
Early 90s. Yep.
And I
Yep.
mean, great. I mean, that's awesome. I love Nine Inch Nails too, but that wasn't the only answer out there. And that's part of what made industrial music so interesting and great is it was the wild, wild west of taking jagged pieces of rusty metal and recording them and putting them through a sampler, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, there was a band, and at the time this band got almost a little taste of the big time. Do you remember a band called Machines of Loving Grace?
I do well. It's funny, this will tell you good. We met for the first time, I do believe, at a show in Pittsburgh where Colin and I went out to go see Eric and um, you know the lads there. And after the show, I talked him into doing a remix of us of one of our songs. And I swear he made me sound just like the Machines of Loving Grace in the remix of our first single. And I thought afterwards, you prick, this is better than my song. How dare you, sir? It was
I
so good. And but that was my first thought. I was like, Eric, did you mean to make me sound like the Machines of Loving Grace? Because it's always been my dream.
like I get that. I feel like that every time Tragic Impulse does a remix for us. I'm like, God damn you, Paul. Like, you're you're so much better than I am. I'm just like, I love that. And whenever someone can just like do a killer remix for you, it really, like, you like hearing their take on your song,
Yeah.
especially if you feel like it can really work in a club. I'm like, oh my God, I can see like the dance floor to this,
I should say there too, it was Eric Adoration Destroyed to make sure
Yes.
that we're shouting about maybe people don't know Eric, but you should go check out Adoration Destroyed.
Excellent band. Excellent band. Oh my God. So yeah, like Machines of Loving Grace, they were one of the first industrial bands, non Nine Inch Nails and Ministry, that I had gotten turned on to because I really loved their song on the Crow soundtrack. A kid I went to high school with was like, you know what? I have their concentration cassette. I'll lend it to you. And this was like right before graduation. And he was like, I've been promising to bring this in for you for so long, you could just have it. So he gave me concentration from that band. And I remember listening to it during, in a cassette Walkman that I used to have in my jacket. You
Oh
you
yeah.
weren't allowed to have that in high school. You couldn't have
That's why
earphones.
they started getting smaller and smaller as time went in, so you could hide them better at high school.
Yeah, exactly. So like I listened to that. I remember being blown away by it, and hunting down their self-titled album that came before that. And it was bands like that, and 16 Volt and Sister Machine Gun. That was another big
Yeah.
one. D Warsaw and Chem Lab. Like those bands were so important to me in those years that and then I just like, because I saw Chem Lab open for KMFDM on the Angst Fest tour,
Sure.
and that was my first experience, like introduction to that world. My best friend and I were sitting at home one night. It was again May 19th, 1994. It was 2 weeks before graduation. I remember this clear as day. We were sitting here and we were like, what's going on up in Pittsburgh tonight at the Metropole? And we had a city paper sitting there, and KMFDM's playing tonight with two bands I never heard of, Chem Lab and Sister Machine Gun. And I'm like, do you want to go? Let's go check out some bands. So we were just wanted to see some live music. So we went, and it was an unbelievable experience. And after I saw Chem Lab, we missed Sister Machine Gun that night because they went on super early. I remember we got there and it was still daylight out and they had already finished. And I'm like, the first band's done already? That kind of sucks. I was curious to see them, but Chem Lab blew me the fuck away. And I walked out of there being like, everything I've ever heard sucks compared to that. I just want to find more of that. And, in college, it ended up being a never ending hunt. I got, found Spawn Ranch and
Ethan.
Kill Switch Click, and there was the list of bands is endless. Diatribe, Christ Analog. It seemed to never end.
Yeah.
Like there was always somebody new to find and check out. And then I got in college radio, started DJing in college radio because I wanted to share my love of that with whoever would listen. Honestly, because there weren't that many people who were just like, Jim likes some
There
weird
are
stuff.
literally dozens of us.
Yeah, exactly. So, and even back then I felt like it was so tiny compared to what it is now. And
Yeah.
and so I kind of still have that mentality when I'm signing artists, or I'm putting out new music on the label. I don't think that's a feeling that'll ever go away.
Right. Well, and it's funny too. It cracks me up hearing you say that because I was the same way and thought about like, oh my God, there's so many of these great industrial bands. And one of my first shows, I think I was only 15, so my uncle took us to, and it was also Die Warsaw and Sister Machine Gun in Detroit, and just same kind of thing, like blew my mind. I think
Yeah.
that movie Hideaway was out, and they were all on the
Yes.
soundtrack. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, that
So
was I saw that tour here in Pittsburgh at the Metropole again, 95
yeah,
summertime. And Sister Machine Gun and D Warsaw headlined. But yeah, incredible show.
there was a place by me too called the Phoenix Center in Pontiac, Michigan, that was basically it was a parking structure and had an amphitheater stage on the top floor, and they would have bands in a lot, but you could like go see whoever came through for $10. So like
Okay.
from 16, that was what we did. And I mean, yeah, we saw KMFDM there, Lords of Acid, Helmet, Rollins Band, all kinds of like, cool
That's yeah.
bands there. And it was like $10 and you could just go hang out in a big amphitheater parking lot on top of it.
Yeah.
So
I remember during that time, when in the span of 2 weeks, I saw Hole with Matter Rose, and this was like 6 months after Kurt died, and then like 2 weeks later, I saw Pigface with Evil Mothers, and
wow.
like which Evil Mothers, Curse Mackey's old band,
Right.
And I just remember those shows just being incredible. And seeing Hole in a small club was pretty crazy, especially
Yeah.
since it was a sold out night. And
Hey, I'm one of those that I feel strongly, honestly. I think Cole is better than Nirvana. Like, I take a lot of
oh,
crap for that, but look, I like Nirvana. I was very, very into them in high school. But honestly, looking back at it and listening to those albums now, honestly, I'd take Celebrity Skin over, Nevermind.
that we differ there. Nirvana was like Nevermind was probably the album that got me into music, because while before that I liked music, when I was a kid,
Yeah,
going to Little League practice and hearing Duran Duran or Tears for Fears on the radio. It didn't really register with me uh, in the same way. And I came of age like sort of right around the time Nirvana broke,
sure.
91.
Same
I
here.
was,
I think you're 1 year older than me, it sounds like.
yeah,
So yeah, right around the same time.
freshman in high school in 91. Before that, it was just like stuff like Poison and Motley Crue and stuff that an awkward kid could not relate to at all, like
Sure.
party music. I didn't drink
Right.
or get fucked up on the weekends or get
Yeah.
laid. Like that that was not my lifestyle. I was a kid who,
I
had
didn't watch a Van Halen Hot for Teacher video and relate
no
to it in any way.
no, and it's and then here comes this guy from Seattle who's singing about how much he hates his life in like tattered jeans and a flannel, and I'm like, it hit me in all the right ways. And then
Sure.
Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Tad, Mudhoney,
That
all
was
of
my
that.
big one. If I
Yeah.
was to pick like a grunge album, that it was Alice in Chains Dirt. To me,
Oh
that
yeah.
is a song one through no skip tracks. Like every song on that album is just fire.
Yeah, a lot of those albums from that time period are perfect to
Yeah.
me. Even like a lot of people never really give this band credit without them wouldn't be Pearl Jam is Mother Love Bone.
Oh
Mother
yeah.
Love Bone, like that guy had like so much soul. He like Andy Wood, he sung the way he sung was like had so much. You could tell he was like real into Freddie Mercury
Yeah.
and had it kind of separated them from the glam. He was glam, but not in the way that bands like
Right.
Motley Crue and Poison were. It was more from the soul and more. There was more
Yeah.
depth there,
When I think
So
of Mother Love Bone, I always kind of, I don't know, they were that band that kind of like Joy Division for goth. Nobody
yes,
gave a fuck about them at the time, but if you listen to anybody that became a big deal in that scene, it's the first band they all bring up. And to
yeah,
me, that like says a lot about a band is that if you inspired everybody else, probably you were doing something right.
absolutely. And I mean that's where Stone and Jeff came from.
Yeah.
I mean they were both in that band, and then there was Green River. I mean I could go on and on about the Seattle stuff. And then that's just sort of evolved into my love for bands like Machines of Loving Grace and ChemLab, because I feel like the songwriting was very similar. I felt like the cold wave stuff of the 90s was very much like an industrial version of grunge rock from a songwriting perspective, because I feel like their lyrics were very thought provoking and stuff I could relate to, and that was you know mainly being myself being a songwriter and a singer now. That's the most important thing to me when it comes to music. Some people are music people, and they could love an instrumental song playing in the clubs. Like I like Power Noise for what it was in its time, but like
Sure.
there wasn't that much there for me to latch onto, because there was no real, lyrical, songwriting going
Yeah.
on. All that stuff's basically instrumental for, electronic music aficionados usually like gravitated towards that stuff, but
So you
yeah,
brought up something there, and I want to steer us back,
sure.
kind of toward the track. And you brought up, like me, yeah, a lot of people know you as, Jimmers from, Distortion music. you know, but you also have your own band too, in the same way that, like, me with Sounds and Shadows, and then, Amaranth. And so
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about, what that's like to have the label and have that be such a big part of your identity, but you're an artist as well,
Yeah.
and you want to go out and share with that. And talk to me about some of the exciting things you have coming up here with Red Locust, because we're talking about some of them, that you're going to go out to support, Electronic Saviors, which is, we're going to be discussing that a lot. But I want a chance to just tell me a little bit about what Red Locust has going on, and what that's like to kind of, I don't know, live in two worlds, because it's something I relate to a lot.
It's a level of frustration that I've never experienced in my life. It's not all sunshine and lollipops and
Sure.
roses and puppy dogs. It's not at all like that. And it's incredibly frustrating that I kind of wish more people knew me for the band
Sure.
than for my projects. But not to say that I'm not damn proud of what I've done with my other
Right.
projects and my label and stuff. It's just like it's incredibly frustrating when people are like, I've had people be like, we got to get you up here for an Electronic Savior show. I'm like, why don't you book my band?
Then you
It's
would have me here.
yeah, exactly. I was like, do you realize you're asking me to come there and it only takes one other person to come and I can play a set for you? And it make sense for that to happen like that, but I get that like the style of music that we do is not everybody's bag, and
Right.
I understand that, but like I don't I can't really describe our music as anything other than electro industrial. I hate the electro terror EBM, that style of music. Like I've tried to separate our style as much from that as possible. Like I really have nothing against that style of
Yeah,
music,
it's just not what you do.
but it's again, going back to the power noise thing, there's not much for me there because I can't understand what you're saying.
Sure.
The vocals
No,
are usually
yes.
so over processed in that style that I'm like, I told Lee, my keyboard player who composes a lot of the music, I told him from the very beginning, he saw my old band Reinforced open up a KMFDM Inertia gig. And that's when we first hooked up as a team for Red Locust. He was like, I have a bunch of like, new stuff. And I was like, well, dude, you were on Noitech Records as Aslan Faction. I would love to work with
Yeah.
you. I love that project. I was like, but I'm not going to be an Aslan Faction Part Two. I was like, I'm
Right.
not going to process my vocals like that. I want people to understand what I'm talking about. It's very important that people understand my songwriting perspective because I feel like I'm talking about important shit, especially
Right.
with this latest album that we released last May, and it charted for 8 weeks on the DAC. And we were on the charts with like Pearl Jam and Kerry King and Kings of Leon and Fleshfield and 16 Volt at the time and Clan of Zymox.
Yeah.
And that really like blew me away. I would get calls from my cousin and he'd be like, "Hey, my mom, which would be my aunt, is like weirded out that you're charting in Germany with Pearl Jam." And I was like, "It's not doing anything for us, dude. It's not moving the needle on sales or anything. It just means
Sure.
there's a lot of German DJs that are playing us right now."
I
You
mean,
know,
but that actually, I mean, it is something too, and
it is cool. It is cool.
yeah.
I won't downplay it, but it is cool. And so when I go into like doing that for Red Locust, and I feel like this would have been our third album. This was our third album.
Yeah.
Hope is the Last Refuge of the Dying, and I like big pretentious album titles that kind
Same.
of tell a story. The second one was called Whom the Gods Wish to Ruin They First Drive Mad. That was their second album. The first one was called The Repercussions of Shedding Your Skin.
First
And then
Amaranth, spreading the charred remains of hope.
You're my hero. You're my hero because like doesn't that it catches people be looking, oh, that's a wicked album title. Lee thinks I'm insane. He was like, well, okay, what's the next one gonna be? I already got the next album picked out, the song title, and it comes from a comic, a Jonathan Hickman Avengers comic.
Oh,
And
I love
and
Hickman.
okay, do you remember this particular scene? It was in the lead up to Secret Wars, the Avengers new Avengers run, where it's leading up to Secret Wars, and Namor goes to Doctor Doom for help because he involved Thanos and the Cabal to destroy worlds,
Yeah.
and he goes to Doctor Doom for help, and Doctor Doom gives him this amazing speech. And I'm like, that's an album title right there. So the stinking carcass of failure is my next album
I
title.
think that's
I'm
a
like,
Swans lyric.
oh my God. He was like, you drag your stinking carcass of failure to my doorstep and you throw in with people like Thanos before you come to me. He's like, fuck you, Namor. And I was they didn't actually say that, but pretty much,
Right.
in the grandiose Doctor Doom way, But I always feel like,
I'm so glad you pulled comics into it already. I knew
oh,
you'd get to it, but you
dude, I
jumped
have
right.
to. I
And
have
my
to.
favorite Hickman was actually before he went to like Marvel and did that run, but the Nightly News. Did you ever check
Oh
that?
no, I've never
Oh,
read
it
that.
was
You
this
got to send me a link
really
on that.
indie, messed up, dark trade paper, like one story and that was it. But about kind of like taking out billionaires and
Oh, you
like
send me a link to that. Like when
yeah,
you pick
yeah,
that
it's
up.
crazy.
I
I
never
think
heard of
he
that.
probably doesn't even want to admit to that anymore because it's so hardcore and he doesn't want to mess up that Marvel money train.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I know he's working on more stuff, but like uh as far as Locust goes, I songwriting is key.
Yeah,
I the new album has a song on it called "The Fourth Turning" that we close sets with. That is based on a theory of it's a generational theory that every 20 years the U.S. goes through something called a turning, and that the end of the first one, the first turning was like the post World War II up through the early 60s or mid 60s, and is supposed to be like a period of prosperity and peace, and and that ended apparently with the assassination of JFK. The second turning is like a civil rights, kind of upheaval, like
sure.
turning that ended in 1984 with the re-election of Ronald Reagan. The third turning is a period of identity and financial crisis that ended with the collapse of the banks in 2008.
Right.
Now the fourth turning is the darkest one, and it's a period of social division and ends with some sort of calamity. That obviously the fourth turning is supposed to be the end of the fourth turning is the end of the cycle. So the end of previous turnings, World War II.
Right.
80 years before that was the Civil War. 80 years before that was the Revolutionary War. So, if something like, so I
History
took,
repeats itself again.
yeah, exactly. So I wanted to write a song about that, and it ended up being a hit. Everyone requests it every time we play. So we play it, we close the set with it every time. And I'm like, this is important, especially given all the things going on in the country right now. And I'm like, the chorus is nuclear threat, new civil war, violence, threats, hate, and more. Not our fault. We don't know how, but we are in the fourth turning now. And
I love it. That's sweet.
we have a video backing it up with just like current events on it.
Sure.
And everyone, at our last show, we played with Gen Cab and Noir a few months ago, and the sound guy came up to me after. He just ran. He was like, "Is that about the 20-year generational theory?" He was like, "Did you read the book? Did you see the videos?" I was like, "My friend sent me the videos, inspired me to write that song." I was like, "Thank you for knowing what the hell I'm
Yeah.
talking about." He was like, "That song was awesome," and so I feel like I'm writing stuff that people are seeing as important, and if I can at least get noticed somehow, like even in the wider scene that is our scene. It's hard to even get noticed, even with all the stuff I have going on. It's hard to get press or ads that you don't have to pay thousands of dollars
Right.
for, and it's it's at the point like where I'm just like frustrated, like end of the year 2024. Not only were I had to deal with incoming Trump like everybody else, but at the same time I was building Electronic Savior 7, and I still needed like a ton of tracks, and I was just like
Sure.
so stressed out.
And
And
just the sheer magnitude of that.
yeah,
Like
to
that's what I think a lot of people don't always get is, how big a deal it
oh
is to make a compilation.
yeah, it's grueling, and
Yeah.
especially a compilation of this magnitude.
It's insane. Like I did 1/4 of that and it almost killed me.
my
Like, so
my
I can only imagine what you went through.
my own girlfriend Emily, like I said to her, I remember when I broke the news to her in 2023 that we were going to move ahead with a volume 7, and she looked at me and she was like, "Are you sure you want to put yourself through that again?" And I was just like, I feel like I have to. I feel like I have to. There's demand. People still talking about it, even though we ended the project in 2020. Other than the soundtracks like "Be One of Us" and Draven's Mixtape and
Yeah.
Respect the Prime. That was the way I wanted to keep the brand name out there by doing those things. But as far as doing like a set, it wasn't until Christian from Cop and Nina from
Yeah.
Metropolis, Dave Heckman's daughter, uh, came up to me after my panel at Mechanismus that year and was like, you should really think about keeping this going. And I said that, I was like, well, you heard me during the panel. It's three things that I would need in order to keep that going. One, Metropolis Records would have to agree to partner up with me like they have in the past, even though we didn't have Dave anymore.
Right.
And, Nina shouted out from the crowd, we're on board. And Christian
Oh,
shouted
awesome.
out too. And Christian was like, we're on board too. So it was, and I was like, well, that's one. And on the panel at the time was Lee, my keyboard player, and Daniel and uh Daniel and dude from Glass Apple Bonsai and the guitarist.
Yeah, that's
My
Daniel,
my name
Glass
is
Apple Bonsai.
my name is blanking who he had playing with him
Oh,
as
okay.
with the live band. It's Chloe's husband.
Oh, Ryan.
He's
Yeah.
Ryan, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Like it was the four of us on the panel, so we were just all like talking, and I told the crowd, I was like, volume 7, while I don't think it'll ever happen, mainly because I need three things in order for it to happen. That was one of them, was Metropolis needed to come back. And the second one was to get Sam Johnson, Samantha Johnson, and Jeff Confer back to do the artwork,
Yeah.
because I would not want to do it without those two individuals. They're two like best friends of mine that saw me at my worst whenever I was sick.
Sure.
And
But
in
also,
fact,
it goes along with the continuity of it. I
yeah.
mean, that's the other thing about Electronic Saviors is, like you said, you grew up being inspired by samplers of
Hmm.
labels and what that meant to you in terms of finding other bands. And you just don't see it much anymore where people put out a series of samplers like that that feature bands from all different labels and all over the place. And that's what's really, really amazing as well, is that kind of, hey, this meant a big deal to you. And you turned around and made that happen in a time when nobody else is really able to pull that off or is doing it that much. You just don't see, I know Christian's done a couple with COP,
Yeah.
things like that, but for the most part, it's just not something that people take on. So where do younger people now that maybe would be the future rivet heads of tomorrow, like where do they go for that other than a Spotify playlist with 20,000 people on it that you just get lost in?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like the sampler has lost that, and
Mhm.
I can't. I didn't want to do a volume 7 unless I knew I could put the same heart into
Right.
it that I was able to do previously with the other 6 volumes, because the 6 volumes, if you look at it closely, were, they told, at least the first 3 told my story, and then the second 3 basically told the story of other individuals who were going through the same thing, and I'll give you a brief version of that. But the second, going back to the second stipulation, was having Jeff and Sam on artwork. Jeff carried me down the steps when I was dying of pancreatitis. Um, and I still had my ileostomy bag on my stomach. This was post operation, but I was doing an ungodly dose of chemotherapy at the time.
You
And
want to, at this point, too, a little bit kind of while you're doing the story,
yeah,
set up what, because we've transitioned over that. I'm glad we got to talk about Red Locust before we got to that, because to me, like I said, I feel like you're one of the few people that is in the unique position to kind of understand that, I don't know, sense of imposter syndrome that I sometimes have, where is this person that is a hero of mine and amazing to me and all these things, or just a band I'm in love with right now, that's saying, hey, I want to do a thing with Amaranth or play a show or something. Do they actually care? Or do they want me to review them or whatever for Sounds and Shadows?
I know
And I
exactly
know
what you
that's
mean.
dumb and it's nothing to think, but like, we're human beings. You can't help but have those thoughts. And I know you're in that same place a little bit where you're literally living in your own shadow.
Yeah,
Like, what that feels like to not live in someone else's, but literally be living in your own.
yeah, exactly. Like, that's the whole reason I put the project on hiatus in the first place. That's a great point that you bring up, because I felt like if Distortion was going to grow as a label, people needed to start paying more attention.
Yeah.
And I'm like, people are never going to pay attention to my label as long as I'm doing Electronic Saviors comps, because they're just going to focus on the next one,
Yep.
and then the next one, and then the next one. And I'm like, we need to grow. I need to put this away. And
Sure.
that's why I stopped at 6, because I wanted the label to grow. I wanted to sign more acts. I wanted to
Give your time and energy towards, like you said, developing those acts.
yes, exactly. And I didn't want my own bands to be overshadowed by this gigantic project that takes up the majority of my time and energy.
Yeah.
Um, so the project started, like Electronic Savior starts in my mind in 2008. I get diagnosed with what they called then stage 2B colorectal cancer. Now, when I talk to my surgeon, who I still see on a regular basis, Dr. Medich, if you ever seen any other interviews with me, I say glowing things about this man.
Of course.
He's the reason I'm still here. And he said, if we knew then what we knew now, he was like, you were definitely a 3. You were a
Wow.
stage 3. And that freaked me out a little bit, because there are a couple people that I will mention. Some people I was very close to, some I don't even know, that aren't here anymore, who, um, and sorry if I get emotional during
No,
this. You,
that's
you, you
fine.
do not have to edit this out. Um, my friend Corey Devlin from Dead on TV, he Chicago band,
Yeah.
was on the WT2 label. We were at the Electronic Saviors 3 party, and he took me aside and he was like, "Hey, Jim, can I talk to you for a second?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he took me outside. He was like, "Let's go around the block. I don't want anyone else to hear this." And he was like, "When you were having your problems, like your symptoms, what were you experiencing? Like, what
Yeah.
did you have going on?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm very open about it, so I'm glad you asked. Um, so, feel free to ask any questions you want about this experience, because the more people can learn about this, the better."
Right.
Uh, I said, "Well, I was having a lot of pain when I sat down. I was passing blood. I was fatigued. I had tightness in my abdomen. Do you have any of that going on at all? And he was like, yeah, I'm passing blood. And I'm like, you need to get to a doctor right now.
Right.
We got through the show. Uh, 2 weeks go by. I'm driving home from work. I get a call from him. He said, I have bad news. I have stage 4. It's already in my liver. Now, Corey was 2 years, no, I would say even more. I think it was like maybe 5, 6 years younger than me. So he was, I think, 29. Okay. After what my doctor told me about my own tumors and the one that was like in my rectal tract, he's told me that it was an 8-year-old tumor. I said, wow, 8 years old. I was diagnosed at 31. What 23-year-old thinks of that?
Right.
Like colon and rectal cancer are very slow growing cancers.
Yeah.
Uh, and but people seem to be getting diagnosed with this at a younger age. I got diagnosed with it. I have something called Lynch syndrome, which my father had, my grandfather had. I found this out through genetic testing. Um, it's the scientific term is HNPCC. I can't remember exactly what that stands for. But it's a glitch in your DNA that it's you're missing like a strand or two,
Sure.
and it predisposes you to colon cancer at a young age. My father had it in his 40s. His would have started growing when when he was in his 30s.
Wow.
So when I heard Corey's predicament, I freaked out a little bit, especially when he said it was in his liver already. And um, this was Electronic Saviors 3. By the time we did 4, he was gone. And there was also Blaine Alexander from the band Idiot Stare or Insight 23. And same deal. He passed away between volumes 3 and 4. Same kind of cancer. He was an older than me, but Wade Allen knew Insight 23. Christ Analog toured with them
Yeah.
back in the 90s, and he was like, why don't we do an Insight 23 cover? So we covered Disease on ES4 under the name Cancer Face, which is Cancer Face is Wade and I's project that we sometimes try to get. The first track we did had Martin Atkins and Charles Levi and Brittany from Ice and Tilla and Matt from Caustic on it, and that ended up being on volume 2. But so we did that. So Corey was gone, Blaine was gone, and we lost Chadwick Boseman. You know, uh, nobody even knew Chad was sick.
Right.
Like
I remember, yeah, like same kind of thing, like jaw dropping when the
yeah,
news of this broke.
I remember it was shortly before he died. There was some sort of charity event that he did a Zoom call for, because this was during the pandemic, I believe.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing someone post on social media, what the fuck is wrong with Chadwick Boseman? He looks awful. And obviously he was doing chemo
Yeah. People didn't know.
radiation. Yeah, nobody knew outside of Sam, not even Kevin over at Marvel knew
Yeah.
what was going on. And again, same age range as me. All these guys are gone. I'm still here. I gotta do something with it.
No,
Yeah.
I think that's why, again, and like, when I first heard about this and met you, it does. I mean, that's why it hits so hard, is because it's so many people and your determination to go forward on this. But more than that, too, when you started the ball rolling on this, the way everybody in this scene, in this community, just gravitated towards you and jumped on, how to be a part of it as well,
Uh,
and
y-
it is important to see that, but you were kind of the nucleus that it all had to work around.
and I will never take that for granted for a second. I remember approaching Klaus Larson in Philadelphia when he played the Strip Festival, which, Patrick had booked him for, and it was like the first time he ever played in the US. And so I was right in Pittsburgh. I'm like, I'm driving down for this because I'm gonna try and meet him. I'd loved Leather Strip for so long. And holy crap, he's like just standing there talking to people. I'm like, oh my God, like there he is, you know.
Sure.
I'm gonna go up to him and I just like I stood there for a second. I kind of froze and like I locked eyes with him and I just like hugged him. Like I was just like, dude, thank you. You know, thank you for, you know, being you. And I asked him about being a part of the comp and he agreed immediately. And Jan from Noise FX also played that and he agreed to do it. He was like, I'll get you a track for sure. And aside from those two, I pretty much knew everyone else from either bringing them through Pittsburgh at one point under Distortion concerts, which, you know, for those that don't know, Distortion started in the year 2000 as just a concert, you know, bringing industrial bands through who wouldn't normally
Yeah,
play here.
promotions.
And that lasted, you know, several years till 2008. If anyone wants the complete list of every show I'd ever done, it's on the Distortion site. Just go to past shows, and it goes from show number one, Android Lust, I Parasite, and Andraculoid at Club Laga in 2000, all the way until our upcoming Amulet show. And I think there's 217 of them.
Wow.
Um,
I'll make sure to put a link of it when I post the interview so people could go check that out and look
it's
through.
it's a
I'll even
cool.
circle that Adoration Destroyed show that Colin and I came out for.
Yeah, I think that's somewhere in the 180s or 190s, I think. Like that was when, you know, shortly before the pandemic, that was when I was considering not doing it anymore. Like
Yeah,
I was just like, man, it's getting rough. And then we lost that venue, Howlers, like that's
yeah.
gone.
That was
Like,
a fun venue.
yeah, yeah, I liked Howlers a lot. Mary Jo had you know, she passed away, stomach cancer. And yeah, so, uh, I had just like after I got sick and was diagnosed, like I'm like, okay, I have to do 5 weeks of intense chemo radiation, which is like 3 chemo pills in the morning and 3 at night, a once a week injection of exolaplatin, which is the chemo drug. The pill was called Zolota, and radiation 5 days a week. And it was brutal. I lost so much weight. Like I was down to like 155 pounds. Um, and during that time, I continued to promote shows. And it was at one of the show that came the day after my final day of chemo was the Bella Morte 16-volt show at Pegasus. And that show stands out in my mind because that's when I asked Eric Powell to be a part of the comp and Andy Dean. And, and so a bunch of people just started saying yes, 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 yes.
Sure.
Eric from Interface, Tom from Assemblage 23, Ned from Stromkern, uh, Wade Allen from Christ Analog, and Jared from Chemlab. I mean, bands that I had worshipped over the years were coming together. Jason from Acumen, you know, coming together to do something for me,
Yeah.
you know, to sort of raise awareness about how serious this is. And it was a rallying point. There were a bunch of local people that rallied around too, and that first one raised $23,000, which blew my mind, and it sold out.
Yeah.
So
I
when I
think that's
asked,
the other thing too, like when you and I sit here and talk about this, and yeah, that feeling of, I don't know, the cloud of it all of bands that I grew up like worshiping and being into all of a sudden are helping me with this.
yeah,
Okay. And raising awareness so that other people paid attention to it. Like you said, people maybe would think about screening sooner, would think about, things like
yes,
that. But on top of that, over the course of this thing, you have raised real money towards research that is making difference with this. And I mean, to me, that is something that, goes beyond all the rest of it, that we will do compilations or try and put things out to talk about charities. But there's one thing of doing that and you putting all this time, sweat, and energy in, and then being able to hand over a check to scientists who are making a difference so that someone else doesn't have it as bad as you did.
yes, that's exactly the point. And you know, I can't by any means say, take 100% of credit for this.
Sure.
I could maybe take 50%.
Sure.
But there's there's just so many people. I mean, without Jeff and Sam doing the art, there would be no Electronic Saviors because they sold it. Chase Dudley, who was my partner with at Distortion for a long time, he's departed the label. He came
Sure.
back to help me with Seven, so he still has his thumb in the pie, so to speak. Um, so I do still see Chase, but he moved away, started family. Um, then there's people like Jet from Dark Force Fest, who allow me to have panels up at his event and vend up there. There's Jason Novak from Cold Waves, who allows me to vend and be a part of that event. There's Ali from Mechanismus,
Yeah.
to that allows me. I'm doing two panels out there, the label one and the Saviors one, this year at Mechanismus, and we're playing that one.
Hey, they actually brought you in to
Yes.
book your band for it.
Yes, yeah. How about that? Novel idea. I mean, Jet has done that before too. Jason still hasn't, but I know that we're not his cup of tea, so I'm not gonna. I've kind of given up on that one. But I mean, I kind of feel like there's a lot of cold waivers that I'm buddies with that I see every year that wouldn't
Oh,
mind
sure.
seeing me on stage playing. Why not? What's not to like? So, but I
Have you thought trying to sound more like Nine Inch Nails?
the Nine Inch Nails. Um, I don't know. I don't know if that's maybe that's the secret. I don't know, but so yeah, I mean just those people, and because Jet and Jason and Ali have done so much for me over the years and have let me do these things. You'll see their logos on the back of Volume 7.
Yeah.
And you'll see if you've already seen the brilliant cover art that Jeff and Sam did,
Yes.
is a living tribute to Christian and Nina for pushing me into doing Seven, because and I doubt you'll understand the comic reference that cover is based on, but it is based on a comic book.
Okay,
And
I didn't catch that one.
it is based on Warlock Chronicles number 3, I believe, and it was during
Like
the
Adam Warlock or
yes,
okay.
yes, my favorite comic character of all time.
Nice. I was always a big Adam Warlock fan too.
He is the best, and I don't get me started on how Marvel Comics has like completely ignored that character for the last like I don't know since the '90s, pretty much. I mean, they've done some things with him, but not very
Maybe they
much at
were
all.
saving him to fight the Beyonder.
They've kept they've kept they've kept Adam Warlock and Thanos kind of apart,
Yeah.
like basically since the '90s. Like they
Right.
were they were like each other's sort of confidant and friend. Like the only friend
Right.
that Thanos had was Adam Warlock. But it's based on the Warlock Chronicles number 3, where Mephisto is standing in between Thanos and Warlock with his arm around them both like that, just like my cover for
Yeah.
Volume 7. I sent that to Jeff and Sam. I was like, I need something like this, but Christian from Cop is going to be the one cyborg. Give him like a spiky metal mohawk, like because Christian is originally a punk rocker,
Yeah.
and Nina, coincidentally, her hair is that color right now. I was like, well, it's not fiber optic hair, Nina.
But still,
So
the idea is there.
yeah, and the third, like, going back to the 3 things that get me to do Volume 7 was, I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place
You're
here,
all
but
right.
trust me, I will come back around. The third stipulation was after I got Jeff and Sam back on board, which, by the way, was one phone call each. They came back in a second. Uh, they said Saviors was one of the most meaningful projects we've ever been part of.
Sure.
Jeff lives in Alabama now. Sam lives in the Midwest. We've raised 117,000 total, and they were like, "We'd love to be a part of it again." And I'm like, "Okay, we'll get the ball rolling. I'll open submissions beginning of the year, and that it would last for all 2024." And then you get to the point where the third stipulation would be the hardest. And that's the one that I don't know if the comp will happen until literally submissions close. And that's every band had to write a brand new song, because that was the original idea.
Right.
And I was never able to execute that in the way that I wanted to. Because with volume one, it was always sort of like, I didn't have as many artists at the time wanting to, that had new stuff handy.
Sure. Just I mean,
But
that's a big ask to like have
yes,
a completely done song like ready to go in the can.
yeah,
Like that is a tough thing, especially for some of the bigger names that you're
sure.
bringing in.
So they were like, well, what if we give you an exclusive remix? And I'm, at the beginning, I was like, yeah, that's cool. That totally works. And so a number of bands did that. But eventually it got to the point where all of the big bands were saying that. And I'm
Right.
like, I don't want this to lose its specialness. And I tried to stress that the original songs on these things are always the ones that get the most attention.
Right.
They're always the ones that shine the most. Like, man, some of the tracks from the Dark Clan, holy crap, they're mind blowing.
Yeah.
And then you know that was another reason why I put it to bed. It after six, because it got kind of frustrating to do that with not getting a bunch of remixes
Right.
turned
You didn't
in.
show up here to do a remix album.
Right.
You wanted a compilation to bring attention to, what you were raising charity for, A, but then B, like you said, that idea of those compilations back in the day where you would hear 10 different bands you'd never heard of before and fall in love with them and then
Yeah.
become a fan. And that's what you wanted to give people.
So I want to talk about some of the tracks that I have on
Perfect,
this
because
on
that's
this
up next.
new.
I think we're already coming up on an hour.
We knew
So
this was going to happen, right?
yeah, here we go. We're gonna go speed round now. Let's do it one disc at a time. So start
Okay.
with one and start going through some of the things that you're excited for on seven.
I cannot wait for people to hear how it starts, because Centurion Prime, they're from Norway. And a lot of people know this band because they did the touch on Respect the Prime,
Okay, yeah.
and they knocked it out of the park. Well, they get to be track one, disc one, this time, because they've perfectly encapsulated what this album is about, which is reunion. It's coming back together after being apart for 5 years, after there being a pandemic, because volume six didn't, if you remember, didn't get to close volume six the way I normally did with these comps.
Right.
Every 2 years since Electronic Saviors first started, 2010, 12, 14, 16, 18, it was always, they came out, I would go out and do shows, I would do festivals, vended festivals, I would have shows all over the US where bands in their cities would get together and have a little show, and I would send merch for someone to vend at if I couldn't make it there personally. And they would be all over the place. Like any Saviors band in their city would have like an event.
Yeah.
Due to the pandemic, I didn't get to do that with six. And Electronic Saviors, I didn't get to go out and shake hands. I didn't get to meet people, give hugs and kisses.
You didn't get to kiss babies?
I did not. I didn't get to hear, cancer survivor stories, or hear stories of people that loved ones lost,
Sure.
and which are always hard to hear, but it's the reality of it. And
I never even thought about that though, but kind of the emotional toll along with that has to just be a part of it, not even just the building of this, the getting the art, the getting everything recorded, mastered, going
yeah,
around and doing these shows. But you have to like show up at these venues and hear 18 heartbreaking stories that rip your guts out every night. Like, fuck, man.
Sometimes it's very uplifting.
Sure, sure.
But I hear that when I'm vending, even if I'm doing like a Transformers convention, if I'm vending there, I hear the same things,
Yeah,
because Respect the Prime is it's Brandon Electronic Savior's release.
right.
And I didn't get to do that for Volume 6. So I never felt like I closed the door on the series in the proper way because of the pandemic. And we had a show lined up at Cold Waves. It was the pre-party. It was the night before Cold Wave started. He was going to have us play. He was going to have Red Lokust play with Caustic and I believe the Gothsicles at the time. And uh, that was going to be an Electronic Savior show. And I asked him. I was like, I'm going to go out all summer and do all these shows, and I want it to culminate with one final gig in Chicago.
Yeah.
And so, we had that plan and set up, and because of the pandemic, everything got canceled and it was never rescheduled. So, so I never got to play Chicago, but as Red Locust, but that's changing in July. And going to play Detroit with someone too.
A few people. I believe we have something very exciting for folks there. So we'll have more on that soon.
I can't wait, dude. Honestly, I need this so bad.
Yeah.
And so Centurion Prime, they captured it perfectly. They captured the mood. It's a slamming, clubby future pop song that's so high energy and it's so uplifting. I'm like, there's our track one. I heard that immediately. I got
Always
it.
start with a banger.
Yeah, yeah, and it's unbelievable. That dovetails perfectly into Gen Cab, into Mark Heel, into Eva X, and then you get to Black Car Burning. And that song is the heart and soul of this compilation. Like you will cry
Yeah.
hearing Mark Hawkins, who is famous for the band Mesh,
Yeah.
right? Black Car Burning is his other project, but the dude delivered a song called "I Need to Carry On Breathing." And it is one of the most emotional songs I've ever heard in my life. And when you hear it, you'll know that the chorus kicks in, and it's just,
I love Mark's voice too.
oh, dude, it's so good. And that guy can write like such good songs. And like right after him, you get Go Fight. You get The Rain Within. You get Esther Black, which is a bit of like kind of stylistically all over the place.
Yeah.
You get Tragic Impulse, followed up by System Sin. Then you got Metamorph with Stabbing Westward, which Chris Hall wrote,
That's right.
Cancer Survivor.
Yeah.
Um, Caustic and Subcutaneous, Inertia, Saphira V, Isolated, which is Michael from who's drumming for Silverwalks and Panic Lift right now.
Yeah.
And he's got Nesh singing on that song with him. And then we have Solemn Shapes like finishing out that disc.
Love that band.
Disc 2 starts off with 16 Volt, another track.
Legend.
Like, dude, he's going to be on our panel in Seattle, and we get to play on the same day as them.
That's so awesome.
So I told Jason Novak, because he's going to be, I think, playing with 16 Volt guitar, and I was like, oh, you got to put up with Red Locust that day. Sorry, dude. But we got Ice and Tilla, new song from them.
Nice. Very cool band.
Out. Mark Allen Miller came back.
Yeah.
His song's slamming. The guys at Night gave us a new track. We have a collab track from Everything Goes Cold versus Altered to Ruin. Excellent song. Our new track, What It Was Like. It's basically my experience with cancer that I talk about in that song. And we'll be playing that on the shows.
Is that one of those tracks? Because I've got a song like that I don't always write songs that are about my own life. A lot of mine are a story about a person. I grew up being a big Dungeons and Dragons, Vampire the Masquerade role-playing guy. So I can like write a song about someone else's life and put my head there.
Oh, yeah.
But I've got songs that are real and they are about me and real things, and they can be hard to play on stage.
Yes.
And is this one of those type of songs for you that like you have to like leave it all on that stage because it's just too real sometimes?
We'll find out because I haven't played this one live yet. These will be
Sure.
our first shows putting this song into the set. And everybody's experience with cancer is different. And some people talk about it, some people don't. I mean, if I would have just kept it to myself and not really talked about it or used Electronic Saviors as a platform to raise awareness, they wouldn't have knighted me in Chicago that time, and I feel like I have a voice that can influence, maybe someone will go to a doctor earlier.
I I think you do. I mean, I think that's just it. That's what you've made here by sharing your story is you've let people inside of kind of your head. And that earns, when it's genuine, a lot of credit from people in terms of actually listening and taking it seriously.
I really want people to, I want people to pay attention. And Electronic Saviors never quite got to where I wanted it to be. Like, read my essay when the Saviors comp comes out. I write an essay in every one,
Yeah,
and I talk a bit about this where I really I feel really let down that Saviors didn't get a sort of national recognition by more news and more press,
sure.
because no one has really done something on this scale.
Right.
I can't think of anything. My own doctor nominated me for the 2019
I remember that.
local hero award, and I
Yeah.
won. And they had me come out to Cleveland, and I was in this. I had to do a speech in a room full of white coats, all doctors, dude. I had to give a speech in a room, not the crowd that I'm used to being on
Right.
stage in front of, but it was such an honor that I got to, I was recognized for that. And my
Right.
doctor said to his nurse, like, he told me the story because he was there. And I have my leather blazer on. I have my tattered, you know, you know,
Sure.
jeans, and I look, and people are like, what's this kid doing here? And like, it's all medical professionals, right? And my doctor said that when it came time to nominate somebody for this, and he was like, I know who I'm nominating. Kim, his nurse, was like, Jim. He was like, yeah, there's no way anybody beats him.
Yeah.
And I ended up winning, and they sent a camera crew out and shot that video, and which you could still watch online.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to this room full of doctors, it was an emotional experience. And like, the after party for that was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And like, they everybody, strangers, shaking my hand. Oh, it's beautiful what you're doing. Keep it up. I'm like, wow, thank you, man. Like, I just not just that, and the Chicago thing with, when Jared knighted me on stage, like, moments like that, like, you step out of yourself, and
Yeah.
you're like, this is all because I got sick. And I I I I want people to realize that, despite something really horrible happening to you, there are ways to flip it, and that you can really use your misery for, for lack of a better term, for something real positive in the world. And I would have preferred Electronic Saviors be sort of recognized on a lot more of a grand scale,
Yeah.
because even within our own scene, the end of the year top 50 lists come out, and I don't ever see Distortion or Electronic Saviors on any of these lists, like, hardly. And I'm like, man, and when I see that, and it's just like, it feels like getting punched in the gut. sometimes, and I'm just like, why, and then you get that, why do I even do this kind of thing, and so, but you can't stay there. You can't
Right.
stay in that mentality. You have to snap out of that, and just be like, all right, I'll try to do better next time. And with my last Red Lokust album, I feel like it's the best album I ever wrote in my life, and nobody heard it, with the exception of my normal fans. Like,
Sure.
I don't feel like it grew. It didn't grow the band, and I really want that. And I want the same for Electronic Saviors and the label at the same time. But putting my energy into three things like that all the time can be quite exhausting. And but it's not gonna, I'm still here is the point.
Right.
You have to step back and sometimes realize, Jim, you're thinking about this the wrong way. Maybe you don't pay attention to those lists. Maybe you don't pay attention to to press and stuff that's not covering you. You do pay attention to that one guy who comes to your merch table and shakes your hand and says thank you. You pay attention to that.
Because
And
that's real, man. That's what really matters.
yeah,
And as somebody who writes a list at the end of the year and blah, 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 I mean, I can tell you that's so much more important than like, I don't know, what top 50 albums in the goth
yes,
industrial scene I enjoyed that year.
yes,
Like I at the end of the day, I mean, I'll tell you, at least for me, I have so much more respect for what you've accomplished and what you've done than my favorite album in 2020. No, but I don't
sure.
even remember off the top of my head what it is, but like I can tell you that this was more important.
Yeah, like, sir, I really appreciate that. Because all it takes is that
Sir, is my dad here?
all it takes is really that one person to being like, there was this one guy, Chris Saunders. I still remember his name, after ES1 came out, before ES2 came out. His wife called me up one day, told me that he had passed away from cancer. He lived down in Florida, but she said Electronic Saviors was a big deal in their house, and they both had gear cross tattoos on their forearm. And that, at that time, blew my mind, and so it's easy to slip into despair whenever you feel like things aren't going your way, but you have to persist. You have to keep going. And like, I'm going to keep going with this track list. So, not to get too off topic, but, you know, things like that in interpersonal relationships and who the project has affected are way more important.
Yeah.
Maybe, in some ways it means that my band is going to stay at this level forever. And you know what? I'm 48. I'm not looking to get, you know,
Right.
we don't do.
I'm not looking to have David Geffen call me
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that is
Exactly. Exactly. That's like Lee's got 6 years on me. So he's like 53 or 54 now. And I'm going to be, 49 in May. And we're never going to do, 4 week long tours.
right. If they offered it to me right now, I could not be away from Rachel, my cats, and my pajamas that long. I just pass. Hard, I don't, even if it was a bunch of money, hard pass.
Dude, my dog would never let me hear the end of it
Yeah.
if I left for 4 weeks. And so, I'm fine with that. It's just sometimes you want a little bit more uh
Yes.
than you end up
And
getting.
aside from that, for the real reason you do it, like you said, is if you had more eyes or more mainstream on this, you would raise awareness and money for something that freaking matters.
Oh my God, could
You
you
know?
imagine? Could you
Yeah,
imagine if Jimmy Kimmel was like, asked me to come on his show and I got to
right.
talk about this? That'd be
Yeah, yeah.
nuts. That'd
That
be insane.
it would do more good than, well, anything our healthcare system's going to anytime soon.
Exactly, but the media is not going to cover the guy from Pittsburgh who's using music to raise money for cancer. They're going to
Right.
talk about whatever stupid fuck Donald Trump did that day. You know what I mean?
No, I
And
do.
and so I feel like we never focus on that positive stuff. We're only going to focus on the stupid shit that's making people miserable.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get too far in the weeds on that because I'll just end up throwing my computer.
We'll go down a dark path.
But
But
yeah,
all right, I'm gonna steer the shit back around.
yes,
This too, you're still going.
yes, okay. Right after Red Locust was Anna Cronin, which is a band I'd not heard of, but he's got Tom Shear singing on his track.
Well, that's always a good sign.
Yes. The track after that is by a band called Hexadine, a band on Reconstriction Records way back in the day
Ooh.
that Riza from Inertia is part of. But Jonathan Sharp is the main guy behind that band. He used to do a band called New Mind. He did Hyperdex One Sect with Severin from X Marks Pedwalk. I mean, that guy had a number of bands in the late 90s, a number of projects that he worked on, but Hexadine has not released a new track in like 23 years.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yes. So after that, we got Frontal Boundary. We got a new track from Fires. Cyclone Eye is something
I'm
that people
so excited to see Ivy back and doing music
doing
and
music
just
again. Yep. Yep.
I just had an interview with her recently that we'll put out soon and talking about kind of the new project and everything. I'm excited.
You'll love this one. She knocked it out of the park. Cyclone Eye, something that people aren't going to know what that is. Cyclone Eye is a new project from Jeff Pinkney from Tenek
Okay.
and Mesh and the Nine and like a billion other projects. Currently, he's producing the Monody guys on Distortion, who just released a new EP. But that is we have him twice on this comp. One is Cyclone Eye, and then he's on disc 3 as Music Orphans. But yeah, and then we got a new Fleshfield track. Then we got Amulet. Then we got Noir, which is a Spawn Ranch cover.
Oh,
Then we
wow.
got Trauma Bond's first new track in forever. Then we got DogTablet featuring Ken Magerman.
Hey, I know that
Outrider.
band.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that
You know,
song?
I was so stoked. I mean, I love Martin.
I'm flipping it around. I'm
Yeah,
interviewing you
fair
now.
enough, fair enough. I love Martin. He's amazing. And the fact that he reached out and asked me to sing on this thing, I just was going nuts. And when he sent the track over, Colin and I are listening to it. I'm trying to come up with ideas for what I'm going to sing. And the whole time, the beat he sent felt like spaghetti Western country. I don't know why. It's just an idea I got in my head. So I said, Colin, we just need to lean in and embrace this. So we like put together an industrial steel guitar with like a slide. We had tried to look for specifically kind of country vibed, outlaw country vibed, percussion and music to add in. And then I did the track, the vocals of it kind of inspired by Stephen King, The Gunslinger.
So
And
I want to tell you when I first heard your track, have you ever seen the movie, the Tarantino flick, the Once Upon a Time in
yeah, I've seen it before.
yeah, I feel like that could have been the perfect song to as the credits rolled.
Well, we had an absolute blast with it, and we sent it over to Martin. And I was afraid too, because this is like Martin from Test Department.
Yeah.
Like I was like, Colin and I stayed up till 3 a.m. just tracking this out, going through, and we got crazy. Like we got three-quarters of a bottle of whiskey, nuts into
Oh,
just,
you got drunk
oh
and
yeah,
recorded.
hanging
I
out in the
love it.
studio till way too late. And I'm like, okay, well, this is it. Let's send it off
Oh,
to Martin. And I said, okay, so I don't know if this is what you had in mind, And if it isn't, just tell us and we could redo it. And like 30, and it was the next day because he's over in England. So it was radio silence until, I don't know, like 10 hours later of Colin and I just like,
Yeah.
and then he finally responds, is like, right, this is fucking brilliant. I love it. I love it. This is great. And we were like,
Yeah.
okay.
And then, on top of it, not only is it relief, but then you feel like that sense of pride because one of your heroes liked what you did. So
Exactly. Exactly.
brilliant, brilliant, my friend. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. And we end that disc with Death by Love, which is one of our new signings. It's Pete, who was in the band Dyke Row. He's like sort of a veteran Pittsburgh musician. He was in bands called, he was in Mace, he was in Venus and Furs. But we start disc 3 with the first new Acumen Nation track in like 13 years,
Oh,
like
wow.
since Jamie passed away, so that will blow you away. I'm humbled that Jason did this track. It's called Fool Me Thrice, and it's my, I mean, it's a standout track. I played it for my best buddy, who I can remember after picking up Territory Equals Universe, Acumen's second record in 1996 during the summer, and we were driving home on the same road, and I played him this. And he's like, holy shit. He was like, is this 1996? We're driving on the same road we were listening to Territory Universe on. I'm like, yep. I was like, it's quite something, isn't it?
It's quite something, isn't it?
And it's, I speechless, is the word. But right after that, we have Trade Secrets featuring Chris Connolly, which
Oh,
is
that old guy.
that's going to be on
That fella.
as part of the premium edition. We're doing the 7-inch vinyl. So those of you that ordered the premium edition get a 7-inch vinyl of that track with a Red Lokust remix on the B side.
Oh, wow. That's so
And
I think
it's
Chris kind of is one of the only interviews I've ever done where I got totally like
stage fright.
celebrity stage fright. Like, I think that was and I played it pretty cool, but that was the one where I was like, Chris Farley, like, so remember that time when you did that song? That was awesome.
Like, I consider Shipwreck to be one of the most perfect albums ever.
Yeah.
Like, I love that record. And to have him on this, like on volume 6, he did a track with Mark Heel, um that was brilliant. And this time we get him on a Trade Secret song. Not only do we get to put it on a bright pink vinyl, which I'm still waiting on, I can't wait to see those. I should be getting them here in a few weeks. So those who order the premium edition, not only do you get all 6 discs, you get, look at these, Ken. I just got the bumper stickers today.
Ooh, sexy bumper sticker.
So they are here. This is the first piece of the puzzle. The posters should be here, the wristbands, like all that stuff comes in your premium edition. Then we got IO. We call the band IO. That's how you pronounce it. When I signed these guys, I had to be like, how do you pronounce that? Because it's I. It's binary code. And he was like, we just say IO. And this, I believe, is this track is the best song I've ever heard them do. It's brilliant. It's called Every Sunset. Followed that up by Let Into Gold, new Paul Barker track. Uh, Ego Likeness, new track from them called The
Gotta love an
Liminal.
ego like this.
Lost Signal, Anxiety's Lament. I'm calling Charles up on stage during the panel at Dark Force Fest. He's going to make an appearance. Misfit Toys does Destroy Me as track 7. They're one of my bands from Florida. We got
Yeah.
Blue Eyed Christ with Jane Jensen singing on it, called Not a Friend. That's a great track. Dracos from FGFC 820 does a solo track. Another Jeff Pinkney project, Music Orphans. New track by Lorelei Dreaming. Then we got a
I
collab
love Laura
track.
so much. I'm so glad that she has a new song coming out.
This track is going to blow your mind. So good. Deathline International featuring Red Lokust. Now, I had very little to do with this one other than background German lyrics. This is all Lee and Christian. Christian singing on it, Lee doing the music, and then they sent me the lyrics. I'm like, there's like every third line is English, and I don't know German, so I'm gonna try my best to back Christian up on this. There's a chance we might perform this at Mechanismus. I don't know though, because it's primarily like, Christian's gonna be there,
Right.
and we could always make him come up on stage and be like, hey, let's do a track from Savior. So Sebastian Komar did a new track. Spider Lilies. We haven't heard much from
Oh yeah,
Spider
it's been
Lilies.
a hot minute since I've heard of Spider Lilies.
They do a track called Descend. Stiff Valentine does No One Cares. Then we got another Assemblage 23 related thing called Verm Project. Now, this guy passed away. And Tom reached out to me and asked if it would be okay to include his track. Now, Tom, does not sing on this, but he does the music.
Yeah.
So this is, this guy, Stefan, I think his name is. He passed away, and his wife and Tom asked me to include this track as part of
That's
Saviors.
awesome.
So I'm like, absolutely. And then, we end that disc with Roan Liederman, Run Girl, which is like a spoken word kind of track.
Yeah. I'm a huge Ron Letterman fan. Jean-Marc and Emily are both good friends. And honestly, I find since they're both great composers, I find that they do some of the most like avant-garde, interesting stuff in electronic music. And they're another one, just like you said, that every time I hear an album, I think, why isn't everyone talking about this?
Yeah.
Because nobody
And
else is doing anything this interesting and cool.
is Emily still live in Detroit?
Yeah, sort of. Near Detroit, suburbs, but yeah,
It sucks we can't get Jean-Marc over here and have them do a Savior show.
that would be awesome. But
Yeah.
when we are at small, Emily comes out to Small sometimes. It's not that far for her to come.
Cool. Cool. I hope to see her. I met her once in person at a Cold Waves, and this was shortly after Jean-Marc did that. It was like that Halloween themes. Where you were on there too.
The Raven
sung. Yeah, I did a track on there. And it was like a bunch of people. I think Jean Luc Demeyer is
Luke
on a track.
DeMoya. Honestly, when I remember when that came out, seeing my name next to everybody else there, I was like, "Oh, what the fuck am I doing here?"
Same. How intimidating, right? And so, okay, we're on to disc 4. And each disc has its own subtitle. Like disc 1 is Assembly, disc 2 is Conclave, disc 3 is Rally, disc 4 is Gathering. They're all essentially synonyms for Reunion.
Sure.
So we start with a new interface track, Luminosity. Curse Mackey, Imaginary is
Gotta love
track
Curse.
2. Panic Lift does a very,
nice.
very touching and haunting track called The End. Negative Format came back and did a track for this, which I can't believe. I got a Negative Format track. I listened to that dude in college, Alex. What a great guy. Null Device, new track called Right Go Wrong. It's the most aggressive Null Device and angriest Null Device song I've ever heard.
That's awesome. And just had a birthday yesterday.
Yes. Happy birthday, Eric. Have you seen his? Oh, Jill. Speaking of Eric, have you seen his shirts that he's been posting? Where it's people. I don't know if it's Wendy who's getting these for him, but it's a shirt with himself on them.
Oh yeah.
And then he got another shirt with himself wearing the shirt with himself on it. Yeah. And it just like kept going, and it cracked me up. I'm like, where are you getting these?
Eric is a funny dude for somebody as quiet as he is.
Yes.
But like anytime he like says anything, he's one of those that will wait for that moment and then just drop a bomb and walk away. He's
best delivery. Yeah, great guy. Yeah, happy birthday, Jill. Have you heard her solo project?
Yeah. We did I think I've reviewed the first single that came out on it, and then we did Song of the Day and Sounds and Shadows for it.
We got to do a little bit of touring with Null Device for Electronic Saviors 5, and those guys are the best to have out on the road. Like, oh my God, it was so good. It was a lot of fun. even though it was, only like, like a week long or whatever. But okay, we got New Christ Analog song.
Ooh,
We got Dissector, and I do make a vocal guest appearance on this. We haven't had a new Dissector track in many years.
yeah.
It's called Blame the Gods. We got a European act called Silix on the Scanner label. Frank from Scanner and SITD
Uh-huh.
hooked me up with these guys. So they were on ES2, I think. We had a new Stoneburner track called Collapse, new Unit Code Machine called All I Was, new Sensuous Enemy called Poison Veins, new Monody track called Ether, the Russian White Last Vovs.
Nice.
Vovs. I'm like, it's a witch house thing with the,
Right.
and I was just like, what are Vovs, Tom? And he was like, it's in Witch House. It's, supposed to be vowels, but you got to spell it like Vovs. And I'm like, I'm going to screw that up. you
Oh,
know,
these kids today.
yeah, you should see some of the spellings on these. Oh, this band name has to be in all caps. This band name has to be in all lowercase. This has a bracket here and a bracket there, and an at symbol and an ampersand. And
I remember
like,
you on Facebook
oh
doing a
my,
post there where you were like, okay, if anybody has any other like song name or band changes, they need to be to me by tonight in email with it spelled out, or we're done.
this is ridiculous, dude. Like this time, like more than any other time, it's crazy, especially when you get into the premium edition. And we got GW Childs,
I love
Comrades.
GW. I
Yeah,
I just love Yeehaw Goth.
he
It's
was
just
first
amazing.
first first the submission I got for this comp was GW's.
That's awesome.
Comrades, and then Chant. Bradley does a new Chant instrumental which
I
closes.
love Bradley so much. He is just, I don't know, the best dude.
So I'm gonna roll through discs 5 and 6, which if you ordered the premium edition, you get these. Um, okay, here we go. Rapid fire, ammonia. I'm sorry, subcutaneous is number one. Ammonium got moved down. Yeah, this is an old list, but all of these are on there. Absinthe of Faith, Wandering Stars blew me the hell away. That is an amazing track. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. It's like the dude sings like with such a he like raps.
I love his voice.
It's almost like a hip hop meet, like almost like a modern day Stromkern.
Yeah.
It's so well done. Like I'm like, dude, this song is awesome. Toxic Deception, Angel of Violence, UCNX featuring Vortex Philly. I guess that means the crowd at Vortex. So Mike Saugun and his crew. Null Aeon, Society Burning, The Lonely Death. That's Tim from Russian White and Silverwalks.
Ooh,
Bellhead, Ground to Dust, Electrikill, Damnation, Venus and Furs, and Killcrop versus Killbuck. Disc 6, I Electronic, Probe 7 featuring Jay Ty of Soil and Eclipse. Countermeasure, Imminent Decay, Murder for Girls. Imminent Decay is Lee from Red Lokust solo project, by the way.
oh, nice.
Murder for Girls, Fatigue, Dilemma, Finality Complex, that's my friend Paul's band, Cosmic Seed, Doors in the Labyrinth, them and Murder for Girls are playing
There
with
you go.
Amulet in a
Pittsburgh
couple weeks.
represent.
Matt Hart, Transitional Override, Sawtooth featuring Caustic, Illusion of
Nice.
Joy, The Neurofarm, and Melody Horror.
Good old James. Gotta love that.
And then we are doing a Bandcamp exclusive tracks that I just got the master back from Chris Smack. And these are the tracks that are going to be on there, exclusive to Bandcamp, going up the day of release, May 2nd. Mordacious, Pixel Grinder, Wertlos, Gardera Swine, Nigel Tragedy, Acheleg, Decent News, Never's Blessing, F, Louis Guidon, Swan Severe and the Targets of Aggression, Darmata 101, Scrape, DJ Warbot, Encryption, that's with bracket as the C, and the number 1 and number 0 is the I and the O. Spiral Shaped Mind, Why Luco, and To Be Forgotten. So those are all the tracks that will be on Bandcamp as exclusives.
I feel
Oh
like
no.
I need like a nap, a shower, and a cigarette now. That was and I don't even smoke anymore. But that was intense. You wined me, you dined me, you took me through the whole list there. That was wow.
So yeah, man. So that is going to be Electronic Savior 7. Out May 2nd, though we will have, at least I hope to God, we will have it in time for Dark Force Fest. The plan is to have all the merch. We just put in 2 shirt orders and a hoodie order at Commonwealth Press. We should have all that stuff in time
The
for our
special
first
editions are out now. You already sold out the first run of the special edition.
the first
You're
100. Yeah, the
Yeah,
first
you're on
100
to the
went.
second run,
Yes.
and you're, I think, about halfway through that already.
There's 20 left. And initially, like, there's 300 altogether out of the 500 that are, total
Sure, some you're
of
bringing as physical media to
yes.
these. Yeah,
There's there like volume 7 has a pressing of 500. 300 of those are premium editions. The first 100 are gone. The batch of 50, the next batch of 50 almost gone. I'm trying to save at least 100 of these for the festivals and shows.
yeah,
So I'm trying to hold back 100 of them. There's no guarantee a third batch will go up. It's all going to depend. I might put up maybe another 20 after these
sure.
go. But
But the thing I want to stress to people is you just heard about all of the amazing, and these are original freaking tracks.
yes,
Not even the value of what you're receiving towards, how much it costs, but also what we talked about, what this goes to and what it means. So the dollars that I understand in this economy, times are tough. But to me, to get the double deal of having something this unique that you always have as a physical media that you hold in your hands, you also get to be a part of something that matters for your money. And to me, I can't think of anything else in music that holds a higher value right now than being able to do both of those things for, the price of a fancy dinner.
we're
Like, I mean, maybe not even that fancy, a moderately fancy dinner. But
we're all here, in the end, we're all here to help people. And I came across this really amazing charity called Young Adult Survivors United. You'll see their logo on the back of the package as well. Stephanie Somalovich, who is just an amazing person. I had dinner with her a few weeks ago, and I was able to play her the 16-volt track, the Black Car Burning track in my car. And like she heard these tracks and she's like, oh my God. She was like, I was like, yeah, these people did this for you. And she's very thankful that, like, we've sent her some funds in the, I think, from volume 5 and volume 6, because I was introduced to her by a cancer survivor friend, mutual friend of ours, named Patricia Stevens. um, One of the things about Saviors getting a physical one is there's a lot to read inside. So you'll hear personal accounts from people, survivors, people who have lost people. My essays are in there. And she's the one that turned me on to Young Adult Survivors after Volume 4 came out. And I met Stephanie, and we immediately hit it off. And I decided, and they're right in Wexford, PA. So if any of you guys want to check them out, they help people out who are, on the younger side, who are struggling with cancer and can't work. They help out people who can, who might need, like, you know, toiletries or groceries, or help with medical bills and stuff like that. They're just a very amazing organization. They sponsor the Pittsburgh Marathon every year, and I feel like they're the best. And I mean, we'll be sending money to Dr. Medic's research team at Pitt University, like we always do. And probably we've donated money to Darkest Before Dawn in Chicago too, for because Electronic Saviors isn't always all about cancer. It's about being there for people who are in their darkest times.
Sure. But
um
I think to your point, that's another thing that people don't always think about is the physical toll of what these cancer survivors go through, the emotional toll of not knowing what tomorrow holds. But then on top of that, in this country in particular, the economic drain
oh yeah,
on you is to the point where, like you said, can I afford fucking toothpaste afterwards?
right,
You know,
exactly.
and being able to take that thought off someone already going through one and two, like off the table for them, is, I don't know, a really big deal in terms of you wouldn't think it was after all that, but I can just imagine when you have to worry about basic economic needs on top of everything that you're going through, it's just got to be fucking shattering.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to get like, before I go, I'm going to get a little political here. um I never thought I would have to worry about this again. uh but there's a very real possibility that next year I won't have health insurance anymore because I have Obamacare through the ACA, and I've had it since 2013. Before that, I had Highmark insurance, and covered me throughout my cancer, you know, ordeal. But it got so ridiculously expensive that I had it through my job. My job couldn't afford to carry it anymore. And then Obamacare happened like right at the right time when my doctor was switching from Allegheny General Hospital to UPMC, and I got to follow him because of Obamacare.
Yeah.
So not only did I get to keep seeing Dr. Medich, but because of that, my health insurance costs plummeted. And now, if the subsidies don't get renewed, or Obamacare and the ACA get wiped out, um, I don't know what I'm going to do. Because and there are a lot of people facing that reality. And who knows? Volume 8 might be industrial music to help Jimmers with his medical bills, so he can still see Dr. Medich every
Yeah.
2 years. But yeah, I don't know. I would never do that. But at the same time, it's a real fear of mine that I'm dealing with right now. And having doing Electronic Saviors is real. uh it's really important for me to get the message to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And so I want to thank you for giving me this platform to talk about it. And I want to let you know, and every one of your listeners know, that if you come out and you see me at a festival or show, engage me, talk to me. uh I will tell you whatever I can to, ease your pain, or give you advice if you're struggling with cancer, or if you're struggling mentally, or you know or
Because
you
too, this is something, when we talk about cancer, it's what you go through and what you're dealing with, but it's not just, it's everyone in your circle, your family, your
yes.
life. It impacts all of us. There's nobody in this country that isn't touched by this in one way or another.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone knows somebody. And if hugs are free. Jimmers hugs are always free. Maybe I should start charging for those. What do you think, Ken?
That might, you might be able to knock out your health care for the following year on just hugs alone, bud.
So, I do want to encourage people to talk if you need to talk, if you need someone. um I'm there, and please come up to me and engage me. Let me know what you think of Volume 7. I very much want to hear feedback. I want to know what songs got you. I want to know, if we should do a Volume 8, because after doing 7, I told Jeff and Sam, I'm like, you realize we do 7, we got to do 8 and 9. And that puts 9 coming out somewhere around 2030, which would be the 20th anniversary of the project. So just to have all you guys and everybody, the 400 and something bands that have been involved from the beginning, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for letting me take your music, and that you're trusting me with your music. And this goes for every single band on the label, that you're trusting me to curate this, and to get it out to the people that need to hear it, that it might give them a motivation to fight, or might give them that moment of comfort because they just lost somebody, or they're they're suffering with it themselves. So thank you for letting me do that.
Well, from the bottom of my heart, Jim, this has been amazing. This is one of our longer ones in a hot minute, and it was worth it every bit. I'm so glad we got to talk today. Like I said, this is one that we've been talking about for a long time to have you on the show, and I hope everybody goes out, and I'll have links to how you can get both this Electronic Saviors, previous ones, Red Locust, and please just go search through it and find 5 new bands that you didn't know about that you are going to fall in love with, because that's the beauty of compilations like this. And on top of that, this one couldn't go to a more important cause and just a more important community and group of people. So it's been a real pleasure having you on. And here at Sounds and Shadows, we always like to spin out to a track. After going through, reading through the list of everything, I feel like we could spin out to like 40 tracks and be excited. But we have to pick one here. And I ask that we would do it to a Red Locust track. I would really like that. What did you end up deciding that you'd like us to spin out to?
um I'm gonna give you I don't want to spoil anything that's on the comp, so it
Yeah,
won't be a comp track. I want to give you the fourth turning because we got to talk about that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I feel like that's a track that is very of the times, and it has a level of paranoia about it that I think people will enjoy, and I really hope you guys do enjoy it. And
Just
again,
because you're paranoid does not mean they're not after you.
exactly. And Ken, I love you, dude, and I can't
Good
wait to
brother.
see you on the road, and get to play a gig with you. And keep me posted on what's going on with that.
I
And
will. I will. So, from all of us here at Sounds and Shadows, this is Red Locust. All of you out there, keep it dark, yeah.